We would leave the village to go to the east side, where we were from, and now, we used to Uber all the time, we hardly ever Uber anymore, because we walk everywhere, we walk all over the village. And I would say, to his point, when we moved here, it didn't, I mean, it was small, it felt like a village in that respect, and the schools and everything we can walk to, but we didn't spend our social time, or like when we get a babysitter, we would go back to Milwaukee, or to the 3rd Ward, 5th Ward, Bayview. And now, our lives have changed also, but now it's
And you
always
have
walking.
opportunities, at least.
Yeah, we love it, we go to all the different places.
Well, so
and-
is it more of a village to you, or
More. I
what do
mean,
you think, Dusty and Dusty?
We're taking a survey right now. We're
Long-time
gonna-
people, more or less of a village?
I like the vibrancy right now that you see. I think it probably is more of a village.
Really?
No, I do.
What about you, Wes?
That's a really good question.
It is a good
You know,
question.
it kind of changed when I became an adult, kind of coincidental with the change. So I grew up here, and it wasn't built out the way it is now. But I was I was in school in high school, so it felt really villagey to me then. It felt kind of small towny, and I was coming in from the city. But coming back here, I do like the fact that it's vibrant and people are out and about, and I can't walk down Oakland without seeing 5 people I know. But I can see the arguments. I can see the arguments both ways on that. It kind of depends on. I think it depends on your perspective, and depends on kind of your station, where you are in your life and what you're looking for.
A lot of it comes down to if you grew up here or not. I mean, because I grew up in
Because your
Madison.
perspective is.
Well, if I was still living in Madison, I know I would probably feel very differently about Madison and where I grew up if I had been living there the last 30 years,
Mhm.
as opposed to if I moved back there right now, and when I do go back over there twice a year, and I'm like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
Like, this place is totally changed, because it seems almost
Yeah.
jarring.
Mhm.
When I see it, I'm like, this is insane how, all these, I remember that whole block was something different, and now it's three
It's done-
15-story buildings,
Yeah.
That's the 3rd development on that block, and that's how it's going. They knocked down the house, they put up a small building,
Right,
they knocked
so
those down,
I
they
think
put up
that
big ones.
plays into a lot of it, especially my just anecdotal talking to people, you definitely get a much different story if you're talking to a 28-year-old or a 58-year-old,
Yeah.
so.
And if they're,
But that's what's sort of great about the community is, in general, you have all that stuff going on. You have kids walking to school, you have some millennials, maybe it's unintended consequences, but they're living in these apartments that everyone thought were gonna be for empty nesters, and now it's a mixture. But that's actually, I think, what we want. We don't necessarily want a whole 200 apartments filled with all empty nesters. I don't. I think there's a nice mix,
Just diversity of,
about it, so.
Yeah, it's a really interesting kind of theoretical question, and it kind of drives a lot of the things when you drive off of it, and you get such diverse answers on it too. What do we see? What do we see ourselves as a village? What is a village? That's
It's-
probably go around.
Yeah.
Probably
And
all day.
so this is the conversation, this is
Yeah.
kind of, here we go. I mean,
Yeah, I
this
can
is
see how
why.
that meeting can get a
Yeah,
little.
but they were kind of sitting back, looking at it.
Yeah.
But I think, it was a good, they learned a lot, I think, in the meeting, and I think it was helpful for them, so. But this whole process, I think, is gonna be very interesting. And I'm hopeful that it's, again, we have these differing views, and I don't know that we ever will change those differing views, but I feel like if we talk about them, if we respectfully have conversations about them.
Yeah, I think
I
you're right.
think
People kind of feel like they are being heard and everyone's having a discussion that
Yeah.
if a decision goes away, that there's a group of people who lose, I guess. There's a positive and a negative group, I guess, in any decision most of the time. So as long as those people who don't get their way don't feel like they were slighted.
See, and I don't think anybody's gonna not get their way, because I feel like there are 1,000 decisions
Well, hopefully
in
not,
this,
but
and so I might not get all of my 1,000.
I guess it depends on the
views.
decision you're making.
Exactly, yeah, so there's gonna be some things where people that want it to be a certain way, there are ordinances and other things you can do that in the future put us in a certain direction. So you can, I'm hopeful that again, the best answers is nobody gets everything they wanted. Nobody's
Right.
100%
Yeah.
satisfied.
I'm thinking more like
But we're-
specific decisions, like
Yes.
if a property on Oakland is going to get redeveloped
Yeah,
and
right.
it ends up being a 6-story building rather than a 1-story building, obviously there are gonna be a number of
Yes.
people who are not gonna be happy with that decision.
Correct.
Hopefully they're not extremely unhappy with that decision, because like you said, it fits within the strategic plan, it was discussed, positives, negatives, and you can't appease everyone all the time, so, you know, but you have to make sure that people are
We're
heard.
trying to balance the needs of different constituencies,
Yes.
you know?
Is the definition of village
Mhm.
strictly based on population in the state, or how is
I always kind of
a
wondered that,
village?
like, why are we called a village?
I know we have cities of the first class, and, you know, there's all these designations, what's a village?
It's back to grad school, right? So don't
Oh, boy.
don't quote me on this, and, it's based on how you incorporate and the services you provide. So it's largely the same as a city, but I think some services in a village are optional, that you could service with the county to provide those kind of things. I think we probably act as though our services are the same as a city. But I think it's like whether or not you provide, you know, your own police, your own fire, your own library, things like that, whereas, I think cities are required to provide, you know, those basic types of utilities. The village, I think, can contract or whatever, well, with the county still. So I think
It's not population, it's
not,
services.
correct, it's not
No, and
population.
it also has to do with governing too. The village is governed by a village board,
Right.
who are
And a
volunteers
manager.
within the community, and they hire a village manager to do the day-to-day
Versus a mayor
operations.
or-
In a town, below a village is a town, and towns, villages can annex, so towns are kind of vulnerable to having parts taken by villages, whereas, like, you know, like Whitefish Bay can't come and say, we're gonna annex, you know, north of Kensington. Like, we have defenses
Oh, really?
against that.
Thank goodness.
If we were a
I don't
town,
wanna
if
go to
we were a
Whitefish Bay.
town, they could
Yeah, you
say,
have priorities.
you're in our sewer or water
Yeah, that we
system, and there would be a plan to be essentially, at some point, or annex part of
Oh,
us.
wow.
Hmm.
Okay.
Maybe we should become
Yeah.
expansionists. Let's become expansionists.
Yeah, I was just
Entire
gonna say, we
building,
should do
yeah.
something really weird and be like a
Like, we're
road,
taking over
like,
Whitefish
the news
Bay.
everywhere, like, we just started a motion to take over part of
Can we just
Whitefish
take like
Bay.
Michigan? Can we just say the
Keep
lake?
Shorewood weird, then they'll be like, what are they doing? We're like, that's right, we're coming for you.
Okay,
I would move here
So-
for that.
that was the update, any other?
So yeah, the update essentially is they're working on a survey. I think the survey is gonna actually be coming out in 2, 3, 4 weeks, because it's gonna give the volunteer commissions a month or so to, you know, to meet, because they only meet once a month, to meet, to discuss it, to provide their responses, so that, because December is unfortunately quicker than we think. So I think
Yeah.
the survey is being drafted as we speak within the next, 3 to so weeks. It should be ready. At that point, it'll be distributed to the committees and commissions, so they can work on it.
Can I just say, so just to be clear, so I believe, so the CDA, you all will be individually
Correct,
surveyed, the
yeah.
village board will be individually surveyed, but then we wanted the other commissions and volunteer groups to provide a coordinated
Oh, I
response
see.
for all of
Okay.
their participants, so it's
Okay.
one response
We will be
but
individual.
yes, we are individually
But like,
surveyed.
Pet and bike safety, for instance, provides one.
Yes, they will
unified
meet and
response.
decide their, because that was getting
Yeah.
too many views and it was gonna be challenging, so we thought, and it's their view with respect to that committee's responsibilities, so
Okay,
that's all their
so
response.
it's really the committee's response, it's not
Yes,
the individual.
yes, that's what we were thinking, yep.
Correct, so that should be starting very shortly,
Right.
is the update that we're hoping for there.
Okay. Next is item 6, the monthly reports.
Yeah, so I drafted this last week before, the main thing I think was the Ascension Clinic has officially opened, and so that's a big redevelopment within, the existing footprint of the former Sendix building, so
Was
that's.
anybody able to go to the?
Both Becky and I went, and Erica and Arthur from the bid were also there, so in terms of that.
Was it any,
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, we all got a tour of the building. It's completely renovated. I don't have the history of knowing that it was Sendix, right? So everyone was comparing it to what they remember Sendix being and where certain locations were. But it's a very impressive, modern health clinic. This time it's still very gray. There was no art in the walls or anything like that, so they're still, growing into it, but,
Do they have a focus of what they're doing there? Never
so it's,
heard.
I believe it's general practitioners
Yeah, it's-
and, OBGYNs, and so I think it's,
Yeah, women's health.
yep, I think
This-
they're mixing
this-
the two.
This whole, the hospital's moving to provide care outside of the big hospital building and there's economic reasons for it, there's so, I don't understand exactly why, but they're actually able to provide services at a different price point when they do it outside of the hospital, depending on how they've structured it, so it's really a fascinating thing that's going on, and I was just curious how we think they're gonna be as a community participant, and I'm not sure you get that from the grand opening, but.
They were very supportive. They asked Becky to speak, and so she gave a nice, welcome speech. And so they've been very gracious in reaching out to us, and I think they invited all the CDA members. Is that
Yep,
correct? They
yep,
did all the
yep.
invitations. So I think they did extend a lot of invitations. So they were happy that we were there. So I think both us and the bid were happy to be there and look forward to working with them on future projects. So that was the big one.
Not to kind of throw a wet blanket on everything, but so their former building, is now completely vacant.
They're transitioning, so yeah, I know that they've had moving trucks there for the past week or so. I don't know if they're seeing patients there anymore, but
Okay.
they are preparing to sell it, is my understanding.
Okay, so it's gonna be completely empty and up for sale.
Yes,
Yeah.
I would presume they're gonna sell it with a clause that says it can't be a medical clinic, just
I
for,
thought they rented that.
Yeah, I thought they did too.
I think they rented it from something that they also owned, perhaps. The Seton Group, I thought that we thought that they were connected somehow. And once again, I guess don't quote me on that, but I do believe that at the Plan Commission, last July, they indicated that they would sell it once they had relocated. But I can follow up with them to see if they have any timelines on that. I don't know that I could get an answer for us, but we'll see what I can ask. So that was the big one. Casa de Corazon should be opening sometime this month, so that's the other, big activity in Oakland Avenue. Don't have a full date on that yet, but I'd expect similar, interaction with them.
Looks like it's coming along.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're getting close, and I know that they wanted to be open a lot sooner, so I think they're itching to get in there. Other than that, I had the update of the strategic planning, and the transportation planning continues to move on. We did receive the final summaries of public engagement, so we have the Town Hall 1, Town Hall 2, Town Hall 3, and focus group summaries. I got them yesterday, so the advisory group will be getting them very shortly, just to confirm the scope of what people have told us. Recommendations are set to be provided to me next Wednesday, the 17th, if that's 17th or 18th. In the meantime, they will be reaching out to the board this week if they haven't already. I don't know, Trustee Menta, if you've gotten anything from them. They have a brief questionnaire that they just wanna confirm whether or not the board has any general themes, and then they've allowed for the board to set up follow-up phone calls or meetings with them to discuss anything specific that they'd like to see in the study. We had hoped to do that as a focus group back in August, but due to quorum issues, of, board members in the same place, it was transitioned into a questionnaire with follow-up, interviews. I had hoped for that to happen earlier in the month, but we're there now, so that should be, coming as well. So Trustee Warren, Trustee Menta, if you haven't gotten that yet, I would look for that in your inbox. And then, once again, feel free to follow up with them or with me, or however you wanna provide comments on that, but the draft is coming next week, at which point we'll have a week for me to review it as staff, just to make sure that they're not missing anything. Then it'll go to the advisory group, for a meeting on, I believe they're aiming for the 25th, I need to confirm that. Then followed by a town hall in October to summarize it to the general public, so.
Is this just their findings, or is this also is this the whole thing?
Findings and recommendations.
Okay, cause I thought we were gonna have but I thought the board wanted to, in the middle, to kind of get an update on where they are and what their findings are. Do you
Without
recall that?
recommendations,
Yeah, so we had a point in there before they went to the final making recommendations. That was my recollection of what we had,
I know that we definitely have that in the housing study RFP.
but not in this one.
I don't remember that being a
I
study.
don't remember
this
that
one.
being in this one, but
I can double check with the communication plan, but I don't know, I think, yeah, the intent was, in my memory, findings and recommendations come in one package, and they give us a month to review that, essentially prior to the town hall. And then at the town hall, they
I think
present
that's
it, and then
right.
there's another month from the town hall to revise it again, so there's two kind of stages of that, but I think the findings and recommendations came at the same time for both of those. But I can double check with the
So
communication
it's,
plan.
so it's findings, recommendations, town hall, then finalized report, basically in a month in between.
Which is kind of what you're saying, I mean, it's not final, it's,
I just, yeah, I mean, it's
are
just,
findings useful without recommendations?
well, I just sort of feel like it's good for, you know, either the whole board to be able to get in, you know, in case something seems to be going somewhere that we didn't intend, because sometimes you know, everyone's busy and running around, and sometimes it goes off a little bit somewhere where we hadn't intended it to go, but,
And I agree with you on that, that's why I, at least as this project manager, wanted to see it for a week prior to, because if it's completely not in a place where I'm comfortable pushing it out, I'm not pushing it out, cause I don't wanna have to.
So there is
fight
a
all that
control
criticism
point.
as well. So yeah,
It's maybe
there's,
not at the board level. but-
yeah, and we had hoped for early September, but, you know, once I said things are slipping into later September now, so the initial plan was early September, I would get it, mid-September, the advisory group would get it, we'd have a month in there between the recommendation at town hall, and then a month prior to board consideration. There is no real, at least in my understanding, but there is no like firm deadline that the board wants this approved or finalized by, you know, a certain date, so if things need to, you know, take time to review, I think we have that time, but
I mean, I'd also be interested to, like, when it comes to the board, to know what conservation, like, I'd like to have conservation's take on it, Pet and Bike Safety's take on it. And I was having a discussion with people, the HRC met, Human Relations Commission met, and one of the members was talking to me about the parking issue as an equity